Hello there, it's Lit Lessons with GCSE Memes once again, speaking to you today about Macbeth and a very, very famous speech from Macbeth, and that is Lady Macbeth's Soliloquy in Act 1, Scene 5. We're going to look at the four key things to take away from how Lady Macbeth has presented the soliloquy and look at her character analysis. But before we do that, we are going to just remind ourselves what a soliloquy is. It's a very key word and why that's important. Okay, and of course, this video, like all of the videos on this channel, will end with a meme to summarise that knowledge too. So without further ado, let's first of all look at what a soliloquy is and think about why it matters. Okay, now what's important to know about a soliloquy is it is a speech done by one character to themselves. It's not done to the audience. It's essentially where a character speaks their thoughts aloud, so that we as an audience can understand how they're feeling at that moment in time, but it is not done to the audience at all. It's done to themselves. As well as this, it reveals the future plans of characters, and this leads for it to be quite often used as a nice bit of foreshadowing. So we as audience members, having had these plans revealed in a sort of speech done to oneself by the character, can kind of expect some of the events and some of the plans to take place in the near future action of the play. As well as this though, it doesn't just reveal the plans, but it reveals the true nature of characters. And this is what's really important about Lady Macbeth. Because Lady Macbeth, behind closed doors, in private, is a very different character to the one that she shows in public when she's hosting, for example, in her house to King Duncan. So for that reason, we see the true nature, the real person that exists in Lady Macbeth, who she truly is. And for that reason as well, soliloquies quite often create dramatic irony, where an audience know more than the characters in a play might. And we as audience members know truly what Lady Macbeth is like, whereas the other characters do not know whatsoever, that she is somewhat murderous and certainly got an evil side to her. So with that in mind, we're going to look at her soliloquy now, and we're going to think of the four different ways that she is presented in this soliloquy. And this soliloquy from Act 1, Scene 5 is quite often known as the Unsex Me Here soliloquy. Essentially, here she finds that Duncan is going to be coming to stay in the castle, and she therefore knows that she has an opportunity to take Duncan's life with her husband so that he has a bit more of a faster passage to becoming king. And the first word that I would use to describe her, therefore, is atypical, okay, which is basically a posh word for not typical. She is not what we expect of a woman from the 1600s, and a good quotation for that is Under My Battlements, where she says that the entrance of Duncan will be fatal under her castle. And essentially what's really interesting about this is the key word here, my, that possessive pronoun. Essentially she is saying my castle. But what's interesting and what's important to remember at this time is that women, alright, were not legally allowed to own property, okay? All property was to be owned by the husband, by Macbeth in this case. But her saying that suggests that she has little regard for the law, a little regard for what society thinks a woman should be. And in spite of the fact that these battlements are Macbeth's, she is rejecting society's rules because she essentially wants power and she wants to sort of dominate the men and especially her husband in the world around her. So that's the first way that Lady Macbeth is presented as atypical, okay? And the second way, somewhat links to this, okay, is this idea that in this speech she rejects femininity altogether and her maternal instincts too. So it takes this idea of atypicalness even further. And this is shown in these quotations here. As you can see there, Unsex Me Here is one of the quotations we've underlined here. But she's not asking for a sex change, okay? And please don't say that in an examination, because actually what she's asking is for spirits to make her less feminine, alright? Because during that time, it was believed that certain personality traits, alright, decisiveness, calmness under pressure, being emotionless, were more masculine, whereas women were more emotional and unpredictable. So when she says unsex me here and make thick my blood, she's actually asking to be more masculine, not be a man. Okay, so that's what's important to remember about that. And they actually did believe, as part of a medical idea, that the man's blood was thicker. So for that reason, there was something in the sort of medicine of a man that made them more like this personality-wise. She also says, and this is a somewhat kind of metaphorical quote here, stop up the access and passage to remorse. What she's actually referring to there is a vagina. And she's saying she wants her reproductive parts to stop producing the hormones that make her this feminine way, makes her unpredictable, makes her too overly emotional and not calm under pressure. So she's actually asking for the access and passage to remorse, the vagina, to be to stop working. And she takes us even further by saying, take my milk for gall. She wants her breast milk to become basically gall, which is a poison. And she's basically wanting her sort of motherly nature to be replaced with a sort of killer instinct. All right, something that we normally associate with men during this time. So that's key emotion and feeling number 2 for Lady Macbeth. She is presented as rejecting her femininity. Key feature number 3 for Lady Macbeth is her murderousness, which is quite obvious in this part. And this is most evident through the quotation, the raven himself is horse that croaks the fatal entrance of Duncan. Now, ravens are symbols and metaphors quite often of death, and one croaking around you is seen as a bad omen of something to come, usually a death. So the idea of the raven having sore throat from croaking Duncan's death shows that she's certain that his time is up when he enters that castle. And as well as this, the fact that this is her first sentence after being told by a messenger that Duncan is coming to the castle that night really shows that murder is on her mind and that she is quite a murderous figure. She doesn't think of any other way of trying to get her husband to becoming king apart from straight away, let's go murder Duncan. And it really does show off, therefore, her deadliness as a character. Okay, she is the one, unlike her husband, who is kind of dead set on killing her king, whereas obviously Macbeth, in comparison, is a little bit more conflicted about it at first. Okay, so finally, the final way she comes across is disturbing and witch-like. Now, there's lots and lots of references here to the spirit world, to demons, which immediately makes us think that she is commanding spirits and demons to help support her in her quest of killing Duncan. And a lot of what she says in this section would make the original audience think that she was a witch. Okay, so for example, she's commanding those spirits and demons, as I've mentioned, to do her bidding. It's very spell-like straight away. She tries to control the weather and darkness. She asks for the night to be as thick as possible so that heaven can't see what she could do. And they used to believe that witches could control the weather at that time, which is why we see thunder when the witches come on stage, for example. Okay, so that's another piece of evidence that she may be witch-like. And the fact that she doesn't want heaven to see through the darkness she's asking for shows, once again, this kind of sacrilegious side to her, and many people believe that witches were servants of the devil at that time. So those are the 4 key ways that she is presented. Now, it's up to you. You've got some questions here to have a go at, and I will put a full text link in the description for you as well. Okay, so there's a basic question and an extension question that you can have a go at and produce some responses on based on what we've just looked at. To finish for today, as always, we have our meme. Okay, so if you do need anything else, feel free to contact me through the comments part of the section below. If there's any meme templates or extra content you want me to look at. Thank you very much for watching this video.